Hi everyone. In this video, I want to give you a little introduction to Excel. Now, Excel has always been one of my favorite programs in the Microsoft Office suite to work with. And I'm sure that's probably because I have a background in accounting. I was an accountant before I became a teacher. Now, Excel is what we call an electronic spreadsheet. The very first electronic spreadsheet was VisiCalc, and it was also referred to as a killer app. And a killer app, the concept really doesn't exist anymore because just about everybody has computers, unless you live in the jungle somewhere, and even they seem to have them now. Um, a killer app is something that makes people who thought they didn't need a computer want a computer. Okay? The whole idea behind an electronic spreadsheet was to do some of the work that accountants did using what we called spreadsheets. And it was paper with columns and rows that we would record all of the activities, all the financial activities of a business. And you had entries that went into the debit side and entries that went into the credit side, and everything had to balance out. And the ultimate result report of those activities was a balance sheet. But the spreadsheets themselves, because of the numerous different accounts that a business could, separate their money into. So you could have expenses for, capital expenses for furniture and fixtures in the building. You could have expenses for payroll. You could have expenses for taxes. You could have expenses for petty cash things, expenses for services from outside businesses. There was just all sorts of different things that you could spend money on or that money could come in to pay for. And there were so many columns that those sheets would spread out across your desk. And we would add extras if we needed more categories. You would tape them on. And, so that's why they were called spreadsheets. And all of that work had to be done essentially by hand or with the assistance of an adding machine. And the adding machine was dependent on you keying in those numbers correctly. And this provided a whole lot of business for a group of people called auditors who came in to tell you where you went wrong. um, I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the work that I did. I really did. I like teaching better, but it's because of my background in that. I really appreciate what an electronic spreadsheet can do for us. And the ones that we have now are so sophisticated compared to the earlier electronic spreadsheets like VisiCalc. Um, VisiCalc was, I believe it was designed for Apples, and then Lotus 1-2-3 created one for PCs, and they were the epitome of spreadsheets for a long time until Microsoft came along and invented Excel. And they sort of had wars going back and forth as to who could put the most features into their spreadsheets until Microsoft eventually won. And now Microsoft Excel stands as the hallmark of electronic spreadsheets. Now, you heard me talk about the rows and columns, and that's how information is organized in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. We also have, within the scope of a file, the ability to have multiple sheets. Those are organized down here at this tab at the bottom right, bottom left. The way I'm looking at it, the way where we see sheet 1, and you can add additional sheets. So you can have sheet 2 and sheet 3 and sheet 4. You can actually have up to, I think, 255 sheets. If you put that much information into one file, I think that's a little bit overkill. It becomes very hard to keep track of what's what. But having the ability to have multiple sheets makes it very easy to organize information, say, over the scope of a year. You could have a sheet for each month's activities and then a summary sheet that would, well, essentially summarize all the different months' activities and, show everything that happened for the whole year, except that that would be 13 sheets in one file, and that would definitely be bad luck. Maybe you'd have to have an extra sheet just as a cover sheet so that you would have 14 sheets and it wouldn't be bad luck. I know that's very silly. At any rate, spreadsheets are created in order to organize and analyze numeric data. So the main thing that we put into a spreadsheet is numbers. We call them values, okay? Because some values don't necessarily look like numbers. A date can be a value, okay, because it can be represented mathematically, and you can add and subtract dates. Okay? So those are also values. But there are other things that we can put into the spreadsheets. We can put in labels. Labels describe what the values represent. So is that, a dozen people, a dozen widgets, a dozen months, a dozen days? What does that number 12 represent? Okay. The third thing that we can put into our spreadsheets are formulas. Formulas take the values and sometimes even the labels and do mathematical operations on them or manipulate them in some fashion. There are formulas that are designed solely to manipulate the text that you would see in a label. Okay. Now, all of these things go into our spreadsheets in these little cells that are formed where a column intersects with a row. Okay. So we see the columns A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. There are lots more that you can't see. We see the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And there are lots more that you can't see. When we run out of letters, we double up. So if you move to the right, you'll see that you get into AA, AB, AC, AD, AE. You don't run out of numbers because those just keep going. But if you do end down and then end right, you get to the very last possible cell in any spreadsheet, which is XFD 1,048,576. I promise you that you are never going to need to put that much stuff into a spreadsheet, at least not for this class. Back to the top. So we refer to each cell by the intersection of the column and the row. So A1, K18. When you click on a cell, the name of that cell will show up in the name box here. Now you can actually name a cell something else. It still stays, referenced by the column and the row, but you could call it, Tom, Dick, or Harry if you wanted to. You can call a range of cells something. A range of cells would be a group like that. Okay? When we select a group of cells, that's a range of cells, and we refer to the first cell in that range, the first cell that we selected, as the active cell. So if I were to type something in that cell, it goes in there, and then I press tab and move to the next active cell, next, next. You can see it keeps going to the right, but when I get to the end, the next active cell moves down a row. Okay? If I don't have a range selected, let me just delete everything there. Bye-bye. If I don't have a range selected and I type and press tab, I just keep moving. There's some numbers in a cell. Notice that when I type letters, Excel interprets these as being labels. When what I type begins with a number, then Excel interprets that as being a value. And labels get left aligned within the cell. Values get right aligned within the cell. Now, if I want to type a formula, all formulas need to begin with the equal sign. Now, notice when I'm typing that whatever I'm typing comes up here. This is the formula bar. And the reason we have the formula bar is that what Excel shows you in the cell itself is not always the same thing that you typed. Like say I want to add up those 4 values that I put in cells G4 through J4. So I could say equals 4656 plus 456 plus 456 plus 46. It would be better if I put in equals G4 plus H4 plus I4 plus J4. Now watch what happens when I press enter. What shows up in cell K4 is the answer. But what I actually put in that cell is the formula, which we see in the formula bar. So if you put in a formula and the answer doesn't come out the way you think it should, check the formula bar and see if you actually got the formula right. Now, the beauty of an electronic spreadsheet and the reason that I put in the cells and not the values in those cells. Now, sometimes we just put in a value, but most often we should put in the cell name itself, because what if I goofed here and this wasn't supposed to be 46 but 436? When I fix it, the answer changes because the formula is looking at the cell and seeing whatever value is there. It's not dependent on a static value. Okay? This to me is so exciting because it opens up the possibility of playing what if games. What if my sales were a little bit higher next month than they have been this month? What would be the effect on my bottom line? What if I could cut down my expenses on office supplies? How would that affect my bottom line? What if I opened up another facility for whatever my business is? Yeah. All of these questions can be played with by playing these what if games if you've set up your formulas properly. Okay. Now, there's lots of other things that you can put into a spreadsheet. You're going to get a chance to play with adding graphics to your spreadsheet to make them more exciting. You're going to get to play with formatting the information in your spreadsheet so that it looks better and people can follow the information. Because let's face it, if you just had this boring stuff to look at, your eyes would glaze over and you'd start foaming at the mouth and falling over backwards real fast. But information that is formatted properly and makes it interesting and good to look at is very informative. We want to find out what's going on. And the most exciting thing that you're going to get to play with will be charts. Charts can take just a little bit of information. Let's say I took these 4 labels and I put them here. And then I took this information and I used it to create a pie chart. All of a sudden, information that seems, data that just seems kind of remote is punch in the gut. I mean, it's so obvious. One of those is way bigger than the rest of them, and the rest of them are about the same size. Okay? And of course, we can dress up our charts to make that information, that data, much more specific. And I hope that you enjoy playing with those charts because they can be a lot of fun. So anyway, I hope you enjoy and learn a lot from the MyLab simulations for Excel, because there's so much that you can do in your own personal and work life if you're comfortable messing around with spreadsheets. And don't be afraid to mess around because you can't hurt anything. There's this wonderful button called undo. So if you do something and it all goes to pieces, just hit undo and it gets back to the way it was. Or do an occasional save on your work, and when something goes kablooey, just close it without saving and then reopen the file from your last save when everything was good. You have to try really hard to mess up irreparably in any of the Microsoft Office programs. So I hope that you will feel free to play and experiment. Now, you don't get a whole lot of that in the simulations, but you're going to have access to Office 2019, which includes Excel. So get in there, make yourself a budget, you know, play with your monthly expenses, see if you could afford a new car next year, or what's going to happen if your rent goes up. Play with that information and see what spreadsheets can do for you. And I hope that you will, because I really love spreadsheets. So off you go and do the simulations in Excel, and then do the hands-on test. And I wish you great success at it. Good, agus